Good morning from the UK and welcome to Open Minds Special. I have an amazing guest today. I was going to read out the whole biology and I couldn't do it justice. So I'm going to allow this special guest to speak in a second and you'll get it all. However, I need to premise this with how synchronistically I connected with Jan. Going back a year ago, I was on my spiritual journey, as we all are, and I kept getting a drawing to the Isle of Wight for some unknown reason. For those who don't live in the UK, the Isle of Wight is a small island off the mainland of United Kingdom. Moving along, then I connected with people that were connected to the Isle of Wight, someone who lives on there, and it went on. I kept having this passion, Isle of Wight, Isle of Wight. And then one day I just come out and said, oh, I'm going to come to the Isle of Wight. I'm cutting this very short. Then synchronistically, like Hansel and Gretel, little breadcrumbs were put out for me. And one thing after another, it's all booked, it's all paid for, the schedules worked out where we would travel. It's a spiritual journey, it's an initiation of sorts. And so as I was researching more, I went on to YouTube. I just Googled Isle of Wight, and I was listening to all the ghost stories, which I love, ghost stories and paranormal. And I was just listening and listening. And then on the right side, I saw this talk by this lady on the Isle of Wight. And I thought, I locked in. It was absolutely mind-blowing. I tried to retain all the information, but I couldn't. So then I said, I need to find her and get her on the show. Within days, it occurred. So that's my part of this story. I'm at the end of Jan's story, and I got a strange feeling when we go forward, there'll be another connection. So this morning, I will not go on anymore. Welcome to the show, Jan Harper Whale. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gloria, for giving me this platform to be able to share what has been a long journey, a spiritual journey, to this point where I'm able to write about the ancient peoples, the Wihtwara of the Isle of Wight. Its ancient name is Wickland. So I'm going to honor my Native American elder by giving a little paraphrase to the ending, and then I shall go back to the beginning. So the Wihtwara were an ancient race of people. They were nature loving. They worshipped Nethos, the Earth Mother, and they lived peaceably on the island way before we know. They were here before the Romans. A confederacy of 7 tribes came from Sweden, Denmark, the Cimbric Peninsula, and they migrated over here and they found the island, and they knew that the island is most sacred. It has been for aeons the most sacred place. We now see the island as the root chakra to Britain. And we also know that there is a spine, which we call the spine of Albion, that runs all the way up to Scotland, and the island is the beginning. Whatever happens here travels on. And people who, the spiritual community on the island, have come to realize the important role that the island has. Many sacred places we have. And the Wihtwara lived peaceably until the urgency of the Roman Catholic doctrine from Rome decided that there was only one God. And so they came to Britain and they converted many pagan people, nature-loving people. But on the island, they were devout. They would not, could not move away from their gods and goddesses. And so they were the very last people in Britain to be converted. And the only way that that happened was that there was a massacre in 686 AD, and the whole of the Wihtwara were gone. And that's part of my journey, is to remember them, honor them, respect them, and let people know that their message is so important in this time.
Beautiful. I love it. I'm just going to hold you there. So that's the end. I'll go back to the beginning. And part of this is, Jan, you've written a trilogy, 3 books, which we will touch upon in order. But the first part that I would like to go into is, where did it begin for you? This, I mean, obviously I've started my journey, as I've already stated, with the energies on the Isle of Wight that are drawing me in, and the beings and the knowledge I'm getting that I couldn't have got from anywhere else. It's obvious. So where did this journey, your spiritual journey with the Isle of Wight, with what you've produced, the trilogy, where did it begin?
Oh, a long time ago. I moved to the island in 1976, and it was a choice with my then husband to go to Tasmania or to come to the island. Well, thankfully, Tasmania never happened, and we came to the island.
Yeah.
And with all things that happen in a spiritual world, I was a material girl. I'm a London girl.
Yeah.
When I opened my purse, the plastic clicked down to the floor. There wasn't a spiritual genome in my body at that time.
Yeah.
And the island had other plans for me. But as with all things that happen, there has to be a death and a rebirth.
Yeah.
And I had a very tragic death with my firstborn, Kelly Louise, my darling. She only lived for 4 days. And it was very traumatic. I was 3 months pregnant when the huge bore came down the East Coast. And because they'd built the London barrier, that water came back to the East Coast and came down to us. I was living on a houseboat called Merlin. And Merlin was an ex-landing craft that had saved men's lives during the Dunkirk landings. And they had converted Merlin into a houseboat, floating. Loved it. I love the sea. But that night, the sea and the whole of nature was a powerful, powerful thing. And I had to run from the houseboat to get onto the foreshore before everything. It was like the houseboats were like corks. Just bobbing about, and they crashed into each other. And I remember standing on the foreshore, looking at everything that we owned going down. And I didn't feel scared and I didn't feel angry. I just felt in absolute awe of the power that was there. And I was part of it. I was absolutely linked to that. So when the dawn came, we were told we needed to move into a council flat. And we both decided, nope, we're not having that. We're going to save her. So a group of men went to the old railway sidings and got railway sleepers. And they built these railway sleepers up to almost above the level. And when the high tide came, Merlin floated. She had a huge hole in the galley, but she floated. And there was a winch attached. And it was too heavy to actually winch around. And suddenly, and I was talking to the men there, what are we going to do? And suddenly there were these 4 men appeared. And between them, they winched Merlin round. And she sank absolutely perpendicular to those sleepers. If she'd gone 2 degrees that way, she'd have gone over. She sank perpendicular. And when I turned round to thank those men, they weren't there.
That's a familiar scenario.
They weren't there.
That is a familiar scenario, but do go on.
So we stayed on Merlin for at least another 3 years, but in that process, I lost my baby. and I was going to follow her. There's no other word to say it. I was going to follow her. And with most of these things, I didn't talk about it. I just planned it. And it was the day after my mum went back, and I knew exactly what I was going to do. That morning, a car turned up, and out stepped my sister-in-law. She was a devout Christian, but something made her go all the way down to London and visit Don Galloway, a top spiritualist.
Wow.
He saved my life.
Wow.
And he told her things that only I would know, so that I knew that there was a very important reason why I should still stay breathing. And from that point, I felt Kelly Louise. She came in. We had a lovely, if not brief, relationship in that houseboat, and I never was able to feel from that point on. She opened the door to spiritualism. She opened the door to spirit, and it's never been closed. So I just wanted to share that with you.
That is a beautiful, and that is, thank you for sharing that. I mean, it's obviously, you know, having the shows and meeting people in my mature life, and for myself, it seems to be that the doors open in spirituality through what we perceive to be a trauma, where we're taken to the lowest, where we can't go on. We're either grief-stricken or fear-stricken, or, you know, or it goes into states of mental health. And then you touch that precipice and you just let go. I can't do this no more. Then something comes in and shifts. So that in itself, I mean, I can say it for myself, the same thing. It's, you know, people don't understand, well, why do you not feel sorry for people suffering or they're going through this? And it's not a case that you don't feel for them and empathize with them, but you're aware that what they're going through. So be there for them, guys. I just want to add this in, just to listen. They don't need to be told what to do, just to listen. That energy in itself. And if you can give advice, because when we do touch upon topics like this, on where a possibility of suicide will occur, I will always bring this in, because I attempted it as a child. So, and there was nothing around at that point. So please be aware of that. But thank you for that. That was beautiful. So now we're going to move on, because I'm getting really excited. I can't wait to hear all of this. I can't wait to hear all of this. So
all of this from the Isle of Wight, from Wickland. I need to put that in here.
Oh, this is where Jan is now.
I live here now. I've
bet your life when I get over there, I will find her somehow, because it's got to happen. It's just got to happen. Do go on, Jan.
So just following on from that, there was another tragedy where I miscarried my second child, but in that I died. I had a preeclamptic fit and I died. And when they got me to hospital, the nurse said, "You were dead." And I experienced a near-death and I can say absolutely that there is nothing to describe the feeling where you are fully conscious, you're fully aware, you are going towards the most indescribable love you can possibly imagine, but there's no words. And I wanted to go there so much. All I could hear in that journey was this nurse saying, "What's your name? What's your address? What's your name? What's your address?" Which is what they're trained to do. And my thought was, if I tell her my name, I can get on and go. And that was what brought me back. And a whoosh. And what happened then was a feeling of how much a blessed gift our physical life is. We may say, "Oh, well, this is hell and we want to go to heaven," but no, we have all agreed to come here and we all have our journey, and it is a huge, huge gift. And I've never lost that. That stays with me, that our physical life is a blessing.
That is beautiful. I mean, you know, I too have had one of those, and just being in it, I mean, there wasn't a choice. You just don't get a choice. You're back. And it is undescribable, and there's billions of people now that have experienced this in some shape or form. Even from astral projection, you know, some people have gone off and said, I don't want to go back. I don't want to go back even to that. But it's part of a process. I always say, you know, staying on that topic is, my truth is, we astral project here to this 3D and multiple timelines. Your truth will be that you astral project in your dream state to another timeline. It's actually a natural thing for us to have near-death experiences. That's what I'm saying. We label them near-death experiences, but it's an innate natural thing, like the heart beating, that we just keep on the umbilical cord to the source, so to speak. And for me, every time I hear it, you know, you just feel it, and it's like, I'm home. And you go, oh, shit, no, I'm back. You know, I don't. It goes, oh no, I got out with you.
That was the first thought. Oh, shit, I'm back. But then what followed on from that was this wonderful feeling that
absolutely
there is no way to fear death. It's just no way. And what a blessing it is for the time we have here. Make the most of it. Every moment counts.
There you go. So from that, so we've got your backdrop, okay, of how you came into your spiritual path. I am so excited, like a child. How did you get involved? I call them the gods of the Isle of Wight, because that's just my label. How did you get involved with the trilogy? How did you get involved finding out about this lost civilization? How did that happen?
Well, it was a whole series of events to reach the point where, now that I look back, I had to experience, and that included going around the world. So I want to spend a little time talking about that.
Do. The stone circles we're going to speak about.
The stone circles, it began with the stone circles. So I must speak about my vision dream, because when I was when I was learning spiritualism and all of the different aspects, and I must say I have the most huge respect for you as a spiritual medium, because I never reached that level. What they wanted for me, what they talked to me in dreams. I'm in dream time. I have vision dreams, and visions come. So I had a vision dream given to me while I was teaching about what is happening to us now. But this was back in the 90s, and it showed me I was on the edge of a cliff with a friend and a camera, and this teepee came in. And I was so busy wanting to photograph this teepee, I didn't notice what was happening to the other side of me. And this guy said, don't look at that, look at that. And what it was the whole of the earth, actually her skirts were dissolving. And it was humanity. I had the whole responsibility. It's us. We are doing this. And I had the whole of it come onto me. And I remember saying, this is too much for me, take it away. So what happened then was the most wonderful joining of the sun and the earth together. It was like ascension. It was the male and the female coming together properly for the first time, and the sense of peace that I had from that. I woke up, but I had the dream of a second night and a third night. And I said to the spirits, take this away. I can't take this. And this huge voice, and I don't often get voices, but there was this huge voice that, you're a teacher. Teach the children the ways of the earth. And I did. So I started to learn about Native American spirituality. I went over to the Sisseton Dakota Sioux and stayed with them and learned from the elders. And I came back and I taught my children on the island. And the project was called Little Turtle Island. And they learned all about the native spirituality in school. We had camps, and 4 of my boys became pipe carriers, because I am a pipe carrier. chief of the Sisters in Dakota Sioux came over to teach us too.
Wow.
But all of that happened within a 4-year time frame. And that still is my, my heart. I really birthed that and wanted to do what I could. And those kids are still talking, they're grown up now.
Yeah.
But they say what happened then has shaped their lives. In a good way, in a good way. And it was at that time, oh Lord, Lady Diana, the very weekend that Diana left us, I should say, I was up doing a workshop, and it was actually before Little Turtle Island. It was when Little Turtle Island was born. It was on that weekend, and I believe that she sent her soul into so many different places and entered the hearts of so many different people.
Yeah, it was. It's when I said at the time, it was in written history, she's the only soul that stopped humanity. She is the only person that had the whole of Earth watching her funeral. There has not been one before, and there has definitely not been one since. The whole world stopped for that, and that in itself, it was so emotive for everybody. It was this love. It was this love. It was not at the time anyone could understand what was really going on, but you felt the energies of something occurring. And I just kept saying, oh my God, as I watched this funeral live, the whole world is watching. This means something. And I do remember that. I do. Very, very profound experience that was,
And it led me to meet with another Gloria, who's my deep, deep sister.
Oh, there's another Gloria.
Another Gloria. She's a huge part of my life. And she was married to the chief of the Sisters in Dakota Sioux. So it led me to America.
Yeah.
And I spent lots of time there. And it was because of that, I do believe, that brought me to the point where the journey that I undertook to create these stone circles began at that time.
Okay.
My first journey was to Iceland. Now, Iceland is, again, like the island, only it's right at the top. It's the highest chakra. And there is a ley line that goes right down to America, to Washington. So I started in Iceland. I booked everything flowed, hot knife through butter, as I used to say.
Yeah.
I knew that it was running on faith, it was going to happen. And the amazing thing about that was that the circle was created in a place called Helsna. And at that particular weekend, there was a global meeting. It was like a community of souls had come to Helsna. I didn't know anything about it, but we met people from all over the world. And they were in a big circle doing pipe ceremony. And one of the reasons why I wanted Iceland so much is I wanted to see the whales jumping out of the water, because my name is Whale. And my back was turned when they jumped out, and everyone was going, "Ooh!" And I turned around, what?
Missed that one. Behind you. It's behind you.
It's behind you. Yeah. And it was Spirit. It was having a joke, because my name is not to do with not to do with the mammal at all. It's quite something else. And
Absolutely.
I didn't know that.
We'll get to that
shortly. But there was people, and this is really amazing. There were people that from all over the world, but there was one couple. And I said, "Where are you from?" They said, "The Isle of Wight." And this is in Iceland at that weekend. And I said, "Whereabouts?" "Oh, Simeon Street in Ryde." And they actually came from just round the corner from me.
Wow.
And that's when I realized that this whole journey was so interlinked and goes back right to the island yet again.
Yeah. I mean, as you know, with me, I met some ladies when I started up some Zoom groups. And where are you from? One is in, I think, Ryde, that area. The other one's going there, and it was all connected, and I could see that. And obviously, after speaking to you, and you said, "Where's your hotel?" I said, it is in Ryde. I double checked. It's on the beach in Ryde, and you were saying Ryde is a very, very special place, and that is the place I am going. I'm booked. Near the beach in Ryde, so I can. So keep going, because I'm just getting more excited here.
I lived there for 20 years. I lived there until I started traveling.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's in Ryde. Yeah. So yeah, so from Iceland, I went to Washington, and it was in Washington that the penny dropped about what my journey was all about. And we were doing an 8th fire ceremony, which was part of the Algonquin 8th fire. This is where we are right now. We are going through the 8th fire.
Okay.
And we were doing a ceremony with 8 women and 8 men. So we were totally balanced outside the Washington Monument on a patch of grass. And the intention was to take the ashes from that fire to the reflecting pond and put them in and create the medicine pond of peace. That was the focus, right there in the mouth, what I call the mouth of the beast.
Yes.
Washington is exactly
the mouth
that.
of the beast. Yes, yes.
And we finished, and these Mounties, these guys, you know, these policemen on horses came trundling out and saying, "You got to get the hell out of here. What the hell do you think you're doing lighting this fire?" And we had a lawyer, a solicitor with us, and he talked them down. And at the end, we had actual total permission. This guy said, "I don't care what the hell, you can take it to the pond for all I care, just get rid of it."
There you go.
And so us 8 women took the pit, this fire bowl, it's really big.
Yeah.
And we were walking towards a reflecting pond, and this is one of the high moments. We were walking towards the reflecting pond, and there were these Marines all in white, and they were on parade. And they were walking around, and they were walking right across our path, and they kept coming. And we took hold of that bowl, and we walked towards them, and we walked towards them, we walked towards them, and suddenly they saw us, and they stopped, and they let us through. So there was this woman walking through this male energy.
Wow.
And when we got to and I get quite I get a bit throaty here. When we got to the reflecting pond, we put the ashes in with sage and prayer, and then the wind changed. The wind changed, and we saw it come up, and we saw it take those prayers all the way, the 1/3 of the mile down the reflecting pond, right to the other end. And we were walking all the way. Some of us were crying. It was the most incredible experience.
Yeah.
And that's when the penny dropped for me about what the journey that I was on was all about. And it's about healing the feminine wound.
Okay. Yeah.
That's what it's about. And I've had time after time after time in the countries that I went to, particularly Mother Africa, that's what came through, is healing the feminine wound.
Wow. Are these the stone circles that before you went back to the other, in the countries where you went, was that ceremony about that, or each time healing the feminine?
I should say it developed, it grew, it created into healing the feminine wound. And it was the
seed, it was the acorn before the oak, it was the seed. Seed. Oh yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah. When I was in Quebec, and there was this is another teaching that came after Washington. We were in Quebec, and it was the Mideway Lodge, part of the Algonquin Nation, and they were doing a lodge for healing the feminine. And with the Iroquois, the men and women sit separately. They don't get together, they sit separately. And I was tasked with the chief of the Dakota Sioux to take a pipe bowl to what were part of the Ojibwe. Dakota and Ojibwe had been long-term enemies. And he said, take this bowl as a peace offering to the Ojibwe. And it had the effigy of a snow goose, because this is real part, the proper sacred pipestone from the pipestone quarries. That's where I did my training.
Yeah, yeah.
Not any of the bought stuff. This is, and effigies will only come through on that red catlinite. So I had this, and I presented it, and it happened that there were two pipe stems that kept offering themselves, and one was male and one was female. And so when I offered the pipe to the leaders of the lodge, the twins, they were really taken back, because they said, well, this is a huge gift, because for the first time, the women can now smoke the pipe.
Yeah, yeah.
And that was another teaching, that this is about healing the feminine wound, and the lodge was all about that. And Gaston Lavoie, a wonderful man, spoke about that, that I have on my website. It's on my website about Gaston Lavoie.
Okay, so if after the show, if you want to go deeper in that area, go to Jan's website. We will talk about her website at the end of the recording, but you'll find that story there if you wish to know more. Do go on. I'm sitting there waiting for it. You know what I'm doing.
So oh dear, this is something. We came away from Quebec. We were meant to go down to Hopi Land, which we did end up going to eventually. But we ended up in Washington, staying at this lawyer's house, and 9/11 happened. So we were there for 9/11. And apart from all of the trauma and the shock, I could go into what my own personal feelings about it are, because I knew that it wasn't as straightforward at all.
No, we best not touch on that, but I understand where you're coming from. Let's jump back on this spiritual.
We're going to jump away from that.
We are going to, yes.
What happened after that was the peace vigil. Now that I was on the committee to decide whether we were actually going to go ahead with it. And in the end, we decided, yes, we must go ahead with this. And the Peace Vigil in Washington is the hugest gathering of world spiritual leaders you could possibly imagine. We had Mexican, we had Aztec people, we had the African, we had obviously all of the Native Americans, the Lakota were there, Hopi were there. So it's a huge gathering, amazing. And it took the whole grounds of where the cenotaph is. It's huge. And I think probably it's one of the high moments, because we were all in shock, but we all decided that this whole meeting was about the healing. And to send off absolutely as much as we can help for those who had passed. Now in that, there was this medicine woman, and she had brought a buffalo robe with her. She was in this huge teepee, and I gravitated towards her because I'm Eagle Singing Moon. My name is Eagle, and she was Eagle Moon. It's Eagle Woman, and we gravitated to each other. And she had this sacred buffalo robe at the base of her teepee with all of the moon and the sun and all of the every kind of symbology you could think of was on here. It was very, very powerful. And I stayed with her that night, and we did pipe. And when I was asleep, I heard this huge pounding going on. I woke up and there was this huge pounding, and it went on and on. I went back to sleep again, and I looked out and I thought, there was huge rain. You know, why is everything so sunny and dry? And she said, what did you have? I said, well, this pounding of rain. She said, no, that was buffalo. buffalo had come to send their prayers to all of those who had passed.
Wow.
Oh, it was so, yeah.
Yeah. Nah. I mean, you know, it's very, when you hear other people's experiences that are so deep and profound, and even when, you know, I've narrated some of my own, and you cannot, unless you've experienced it, really grasp what it does to the physical body and the energies. However, I think the way you've presented that, I have a good idea the effect it had upon you. And this constant, for me, I mean, leading up to, see you constantly connecting or reconnecting with Mother Nature, with different tribes, different civilizations. And as it evolves and it evolves and evolves, it's like, you know, what do you call it? It's like you know, when you roll a snowball down the hill, it gets bigger and bigger, and it accelerates and it accelerates. And the more it accelerates, the more energies tend to come. Not that I'm calling you a snowball, but, you know, I'm just giving an analogy of how I'm perceiving now your journey and where it's leading up to. So, yeah, do go on, Jan, please.
Right, so now we're leading to the point of going to Israel.
Mm-hmm.
And I stayed in Jerusalem, and I got so involved with life there, I missed my flight. So I stayed in Israel a lot longer than I'd anticipated.
Yeah.
But having said that, it would take far the amount of experiences that I had there with the Ziga, where you had the Hebrew and the Aramaic together in a prayer circle, and I was part of that, and they were alternating between the Hebrew and the Arabic, and it was amazing power of rising between the two people, and that was what the stone circle was about. And we found that it was on the ancient, you know, the Yom Kippur War. That's where, on the top of the hill, that's where the stone circle went, and we brought the two people together.
Beautiful, beautiful. I mean, I do have a connection with the Palestinian and Arab world, and I've always found from my own personal experience, and you've just, you know, mirrored that, is I've never saw a divide between them.
No.
Never expressed a divide. The TV may express a divide, but the energies of them when they're together is so different.
Absolutely. When you talk to the people of Jerusalem, and that is the heart center of Israel, there is no difference, and they say there is no difference.
There's no difference. There's none. It's only the media that tells you there's this going on. However, we don't want to go down that road. So we need to move on, because we got to get there. After Jerusalem and the experiences you had there, don't worry, I'll bring on the show again and we can do individual ones. What comes next? Are you then back? Do you then come back to the Isle of Wight, or is there another area you go with the circles?
Yes, there's the biggest stone circle in Africa.
Okay.
Now that would take another talk. I stayed there well over a year. I had to renew my visa. And the stone circle that was created there was probably, well, is the biggest. And the stones were big. They came from a quarry. They were embedded in, and they were the 12 circles for signs. We call it the sign of it's a zodiacal thing, but there was a Star of David, a 12 pointed star up in the heavens while we were doing this. We had people come from the length and breadth of Africa. We had people come from Wales.
Wow.
This guy came from Wales and gave a talk to the orphans, because I was living in the orphanage in Mahalisburg. Totally huge experience there. Did another session there. But this guy, he taught the orphans about Ceridwen. He came to teach about the goddess. And that's what the energy of that was about.
Okay, right.
Yeah. So this is about America the fatherland and Africa the motherland, and I always call her Mother Africa because this is where the feminine wound really needs to
be healed.
Yeah.
Then what happens next?
Well, I came back very ill because I was living in the township and I was like a stick insect when I came back. And I came back to Oxford. To begin with, my girls met me at the airport, and you know how it is when you don't know what you're like. I'd not looked in a mirror for 2 years, and my girls were smiling and happy to see me. And as I got closer and closer, I saw their faces just draw into this open-mouthed look. I must have looked dreadful. So I became very ill. I had the Jenner Institute in Oxford, who's responsible for our vaccines, of wonderful people, and they took care of me. I had lots of things wrong. And so I stayed in Oxford to get well.
Sorry to interrupt. There's a background noise coming through. Oh, there we go.
There we go. And I was made well in Oxford. Stayed a little bit in Glastonbury. Not my place to be, because I had to go back. The island was pulling me more than anywhere else. And I think I have to say that in all the travels, I could have put down roots anywhere. And some of them were really beautiful, like Flagstaff in Arizona. Oh, I was offered. But I had to come back to the island. And as soon as I came back, this time from my own volition, because the last time I was forced, if you like, it wasn't my choice.
No.
This was, everything started to open up. I had a spirit energy with me when I came back, and I knew that I had to walk the island to get to know the island in a spiritual sense. So I started making tree essences called the Wihtwara essences, and they're all trees all around the island, but I was being led. She showed me where to go. She showed me how to do it. It was like, well, who is this lady? And I called her my lady for so long. And I knew she was with me. The energy, the presence is so strong. And then I went up and I found the long stone.
The long stone, that's the one.
It all starts with the long stone. Trust me, it really does. And when I put my hand to the long stone, I became this lady. I became her. I was her. And I was at the witness to the massacre. I saw the Saxon army come over the ridge. And I saw the man, and he wasn't a man, he was a monster in the Saxon mask, come up. And that was the end of me. And I say me impersonal because that's how it was. And it was so terrible that I put it aside. I didn't want to know. I didn't go to the Longstone, I just carried on making my tree essences, didn't go near the Longstone. And then I was with a friend, and suddenly she showed me where she was buried, which is in a forest, Brightstone Forest. On an unexcavated female burial mound that is really Bronze Age. But I found out later, a wonderful archaeologist friend who actually sparked me off to do the research. He said, well, you do know that high-born people, Saxons, were buried in the Bronze Age, burial mounds. I went, oh, wow. Well, there you go, because I was always thinking, well, I should be looking at something much earlier than that. And I couldn't grab it. I couldn't get there. As soon as he said that, I knew that and the research came in thick and fast. I mean, I can't even begin. Well, the whole of the talk is about the research, and
absolutely, yes.
People could go and watch that and listen to that and learn.
I will jump in here on YouTube. This is how I found Jan, was her talking about the research. And even though I have an academic background, I was like, oh my God, I can't get all this at once. But, you know, you may be better at it than I. And I had to keep pausing to try and absorb what I just heard. But you're not going to remember everything. It's going to be one of those things you need to listen a bit, stop, digest, maybe write something down and then go back in. Do not do what I attempted to do for the first part, is listen and absorb. It just didn't work. So it's on YouTube. I can't recall what it's called. It's I think, what's it? Do you remember what it's called? Is it the
Oh, it's right down the bottom of the lead page, at the front page.
I can't recall, but we'll find a way to get it up there with
Yeah.
the link. I'll link it up somehow. But do go on. So we're back to the burial ground of, now her name, my lady, the lady, her name is, oh, you've frozen. There we go. That's the energies coming in. You're back. So
We're back.
Just the energies. The lady's name is, before we continue,
Wichtwara.
Wichtwara.
Now that is a name that was given to me after I did a session with a spiritual reflexologist. No, it's not quite. Oh, anyway.
One of those.
She's brilliant, Juliet. And I found her name to be Wichtwara, and I tested out again and again, and that is her name. And she was the queen to King Arwold, who was the last pagan king of Great Britain. So they were married. They were both very young. If you take it that at our age, we're, you know, but they were young.
Yeah.
And I was shown when I went up to Brightstone Forest to be with her. I just felt drawn to go up there, and I was sitting there by the tree meditating, and Mitch sort of interrupted me, said, look what I found, look what I found. And he had this photograph, this image, which I can share with you later, of a face. And I looked at her and I thought, oh, it's her, it's her. She was young. She was so pretty, and I just lost it then, because she was showing me, I felt her come in.
How did he get the image?
It was on a tree, birch tree. Birch are the artists. The birch trees are the artists of the forest.
That reminds me of, like, oh, I don't know where it was in my life, whatever, but because I've had this also another connection to this weird person, the Green Man, all my life, the Green Man. Just this innate, and the tree, and seeing the Green Man in the tree. So that's what I wanted to ask. So did he take a picture of this face?
Yeah. I got it.
I mean, it's not, oh, I'm going to look at that. I haven't seen that. I'll be looking at it first. It's not very often you can capture on film these moments. And it's like somehow the universe allows you at the right time in the right place for the right reason. Just another breadcrumb. Go this way. Go this way. Do go on.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's like the guardian image at the Longstone that in the first book.
Yeah.
One and only time she has ever been seen, and I got her on the photograph a very early morning. I wanted to tell that to you, because you know the picture.
Yeah.
She has got that image so spot on at that place where you're meant to go. You will.
Where I'm going, and that's why you said to me to look in a certain place. Now I get it. Oh, I can't wait.
You look closely.
I will look.
That image on the front cover of the first book is the guardian. She's there.
I will do that. I will make time to do that now. You've got me buzzing. Yeah. I'm not going to stop the recording to go and do it. I'm tempted. I'm not going to do this. Okay, do go on.
So Wichtwara has been with me, and in all the research, when I started writing the first book, it is so spirit-led. I have not written, well, I wrote a book about Africa, but it was terribly written. If I go back, I've got to totally re-edit it, you know. But I knew that I was working with not my hand, and I've said it so often.
Yeah.
I was channeling, and this is her message
Yes.
to everybody, and it is so important
Okay.
for people to know not just that their lives and
Yeah.
how they lived, but how they lived so sacredly
Yeah.
on a very sacred island.
Give us, for the audience, obviously purchase the book and you'll get the whole story. So we're on book 1 of the trilogy. Can you give us some, tasters on what it was like that she shared with you, please?
It began with the elder grandmother, Elder Modor. I do use a lot of OE, a lot of original language in the book, which has got translations and a full dictionary at the end.
Can I just interrupt? What is the original language of the Isle of Wight?
OE.
OE.
Yes, OE.
And where the root of that language come from?
That comes from the Cimbric Peninsula. They brought their language with them.
Okay.
So it's Old English or Anglo-Saxon. Now this is getting a little bit pedantic, but I don't like calling it Anglo-Saxon. That is a euphemism that has been put on.
Yeah.
Their real name is Swervey.
Swervey.
Swervey. The Swervey.
Okay.
And they spoke Old English, Anglo-Saxon, Norse. It was a combination, but that is our language. That's what we have. And one of the things that I found so exceptional is I found it so easy to understand it, to speak it. And it felt authentic for me to put their language into the book. Brilliant. To authenticate them as a race of people who became English. Yeah. That is our English.
Yeah. And I've heard you say a few words, and obviously my heritage is Irish, Celtic. It seems to me, and even with Welsh, when I hear it, the dialect, it's got that sort of like, I don't know what, like a Celt aspect to it. Am I wrong, right? Or
well, they worship.
Obviously, when they came, it wasn't just the Isle of Wight, for goodness sake. They would have gone elsewhere. We do have Ireland. Hello. I was just wondering if there would have been a broader connection at the very. What year is this, by the way? What year are we?
Well, we're talking about the very beginning. If you understand that there's a gradual migration. Now, in the history books, they say 400 began the rampage of the Anglo-Saxon killing and raping. Yeah. Well, I've done away with that. That didn't happen. Yeah. Alice Roberts, I've got her whole documentary on the website, which says absolutely definitively that they migrated over peacefully. Yeah. They integrated with the Britons. They integrated, and there is many archaeological evidence that they both mingled together. They wanted to farm and to raise their families. Yeah. They had squabbles, but there's no evidence of the rampage and the killing fields that the monks with pens, the bead and so forth, like to say, because they have their take.
we're in the 21st century, we're in 2021, 21, and we all know that history has always been written by the victors.
Yes, that's
and
right.
In our historical civilizations here on the UK and the islands off the UK it was religiously dominated. So you got to take what they say with a pinch of salt. I do say
absolutely. I could pull holes in it.
I'm hearing it. Well, you hear it as through the research. I'm going, that's not true. And even the fact your intuition, your gut saying that is so not true. Because any area that was spiritual, with Mother Earth, with the healing, with love, with no hostility, with a way of life, every single one, even in the UK, was condemned, maligned, humanized. So we're not going to go down that road, guys, because we need to hear this story. But yes, I do resonate with the monks with the pens, what they did. Yes.
There is one thing I'd like to say about the research is the worship of Nerthos, the Earth Mother, and that she came to be with the people every year. She came in an ox-drawn cart, and there is some saying that the Britain was the place. There are some saying there's Gotaland, but you know, she lived on an island. That's what I'm saying. Is there some talk about this?
Well, we can just say, and who cares? It's the Isle of Wight. We're not having it.
Anyway, she lived on an island and she came to mix amongst the people, and all iron was laid down. All iron was laid down. Everything was at peace. And when she came round and see people, there was absolutely, you know, it's feminine-based worship. And then she went back to her island. Now, you say that, you know, everything was suppressed by the priests and the missionaries, and they had a really moderate job. I mean, there's an awful lot that actually they didn't get to, i.e. the Wihtwara.
Yeah.
And there were more people like them, but you know, they were viciously done away with. But if you think about it, there is one event that echoes Nerthos, and that is our May Queen.
Yes, now, yes, the May Queen. And because I remember when I was a child and I danced around the May Queen pole. I've done it numerous times as a child. Yeah. It was compulsory, but I thoroughly enjoyed it, actually. I thought it was fun. But as I was growing up, and I thought, it come into my well, this is in a Christian country, this is not Christianity. That was sure. And then it started to come up, well, this is pagan. And I'm going, okay, but that's fine. It resonates with me, so I must be a pagan. Because I definitely wasn't a Christian, because at that point, I just didn't have, God was not in a good favor with me at that point in childhood.
I've been there. I know that one.
Yeah, I remember feeling this earthy, and it was like I was dancing with the fairies or the elementals. Yeah,
done that.
And it's like, oh, I'm dancing with them, and I do remember that. So that comes from that period. So I mean, we could say pre 400 AD, couldn't we? We don't know when.
Oh, very, very, very pre.
Yeah.
I mean, I started the Wihtwara at an unspecified date, but there's kind of like a 185, 200 AD.
Okay.
And half of the book is dedicated to Woden, and the other half is dedicated to Nerthos. So there's a balance between the two. And
for the audience, who is Woden?
Woden is a... well, some people say it's Odin, but Woden, two different gods. Woden is the All-Father, but he comes in different guises. And all the research I've done is that the Romans knew of him and called him Mercurius because he was a great debater. He was a poet. He learned how to be a great healer by hanging from Yggdrasil, and he learned, there's a whole chapter in the first book of how Woden became a great healer with what they call the glory staves, which is the healing wood and the healing herbs. Whole chapter on that. And so I've tried to, in the book, I was shown that I needed to bring Woden into what we could call a demigod. He was a boy, he grew to a man, he was living, and this is a much later than people would appreciate or think, because if you look at the bloodline of Woden that goes up as far as Hengist and Horsa, which are the first people has said to come over to Kent, they were the great grandsons of Woden. So he is in a time frame of a living god.
So he was a demigod. He was a demigod.
Woden was a demigod.
Okay.
And I have been shown that needs to be known.
Okay.
Because all of the people, all of the Wihtwara and the Swavi had an intimate one-to-one personal relationship with their gods and goddesses. They were really, really close to them.
I'm with you.
They carried talismans, they worshipped them, they prayed to them every day. And it was like so close to nature that they understood that there, you know, many rituals for good harvest.
I know, you know, we may end up doing a part 2 to this because we're just on the first book. This demigod, now, for the audience, so define a demigod, the conception of a demigod. How does that title come?
A demigod. Well, it's one that came to me. You could say that Jesus was a demigod because he lived on Earth.
You could say, yeah, I call him, I say more of a hybrid, but a demigod does for me. Yeah, same thing. So we're looking at a physical woman, as in Mary again, and a high vibrational being of some description. And back in the day, they were called the gods. So we're told, but the demigods. So if anyone's sort of like, what's going on? What is a demigod? Very similar, as Jan said, to the man Jesus, how he came about without sexual intercourse. That's how it goes. And there's a same bloodline going through, which has been a lot of. The bloodline. So I do want to go into the bloodline of this, but what I'm going to do, guys, we're coming up to the hour, so I'm going to stop the video. We're going to have a break, and then I'm going to start recording again for part 2, because we cannot get all of this in 1 hour. This is going to be a first for me. I'm do part 1 and there'll be part 2. So I'm going to close this conversation. We're going to have a break and we'll come back in part 2 soon. Hold your horses.